Let's turn to politics now, shall we? So Keir Starmer is arriving in Washington for his first NATO summit, where he'll meet world leaders for the alliance's 75th anniversary.
Now, that is, as the Prime Minister remains committed to the increased defence spending, he plans to bring that up to 2.5% of GDP following a review into military capabilities.
Well, reports suggest that the new leader could also boost the size of the army in a bid to tackle foreign aggressors. Let's get the thoughts of John Oxley and all of this, political commentator who joins us in the studio. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning.
So first of all, let's talk about NATO, shall we? And Starmer arriving on the international stage, newly elected with a huge number of MPs behind him. He'll be feeling pretty buoyant, I'm imagining. What sort of reception will be awaiting him at NATO as he says everybody needs to increase spending?
Well, I think that will make it difficult in some ways, but generally as a new leader, particularly a new leader of one of the more influential countries in the alliance, everyone's going to want to build those relationships. They're going to want to speak to him. So I imagine it'll be quite a warm reception until he starts asking them. Some NATO members have really upped their defence spending lately, but some still are lagging behind this target, which has been agreed to a long time ago, but very rarely kept to.
John, do they not see it as in all their interests, though, in everybody's domestic interests to increase defence spending?
They do, but they also have to find the money from somewhere. They all have very similar domestic situations that we do. They've got other things to spend for. It's kind of like when you go out for dinner with your friends. Everyone wants it to be nice, but when the bill comes round, some people start to argue about exactly what they should be chipping in.
Starmer's going to have his first bilateral meeting with the President of the United States today. How do you think that will go? I mean, politically, they're on the same sort of side of the spectrum, for starters.
It should be a warm reception, I imagine. As well, particularly David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, has long links to US politics and the Democratic establishment, so their sort of sub-team should get on quite well. And there's the enthusiasm, again, of a new leader, but this is a key relationship for Great Britain and for the United States. It'll be interesting to see how that really develops. We've seen, famously, George Bush and Tony Blair were political opposites, but got on very well.
Yeah.
Others have varied.
You look at the Bush-Blair situation. I mean, Tony Blair, in fairness, he was always into the big names, the showbiz aspect to everything, and what worked for him. And it did, as you say, work. What about Biden? Do you expect to see him there after November?
I think it's unlikely at the moment. I think
whether he was to win the election or not.
I think both are unlikely. I think what you see, the manoeuvres going on in the Democrat Party, you've got a few more people breaking ranks, saying it's time for him to move on. But the window's pretty close. Really, if he's going to make that decision, it's between now and the convention, which is at the start of next month. So this is crunch time.
Okay, then let's say it's Trump who's the next president. How does that change the contributions that the European nations will make to their defence spending?
Well, one of the things is it could go up a lot because Donald Trump is threatening in some circumstances to pull out of NATO or to certainly reorientate American attention to China rather than Russian aggression. So I think with that, we've seen a lot of talk around European capitals of really boosting up European defence spending, building up our own capabilities in case the Americans aren't there anymore.
Quite an interesting first fortnight for our new Prime Minister, because there's a big international convention happening next week as well, I think. But can we just reflect on the historic moments that we witnessed yesterday in Parliament, all of these new MPs being sworn in, interesting speeches from both Sunak and Starmer at the dispatch box?
Yes, and it's a real changing of the guard moment, a huge personal moment for it's the biggest generation of new MPs we've ever had. Half of the House of Commons are newly in there. A very emotional moment. I think particularly when we compare it with some of the chaos in the US or other countries, I think a great moment for the country that it moves in such good humour from one party to the other.
And his personal poll rating, I notice, has already gone up.
There's always a honeymoon period.
Yes.
The question is whether it stays around.
It wasn't guaranteed with Starmer, though, was it? There were a lot of people saying that his party was always polling well, but his personal polling was pretty poor. So interesting to see that has shifted a couple of points.
People quite often like seeing someone installed holding the office out in front of number 10, but there's a lot of difficulties on the horizon.
What about the Conservatives? What difficulties do they have on the horizon, and how long have they got to sort them out?
Well, that's a big question for the party. We're starting to see already a bit of infighting come out. There was some comments yesterday from Kemi Badenoch about things Suella Braverman had said in the US. I think really they sort of need to get it out of their system quite quickly and then focus. This is a huge rebuilding effort that the party are going to have to do.
And they've just selected the replacement for Sir Graham Brady, who we had with us on election morning, to head up the 1922 committee, which of course sets out the whole programme for any leadership contest.
Yes.
Who've they chosen?
So they've chosen Bob Blackman, I believe, who is a long experienced MP, the sort of person who's seen leaders come and go, but will have a key role in setting out how the next leader is elected. In particular, the first decisions he'll be making around the timetable, but also this idea of thresholds and how many nominations you need, which can really narrow or widen the field. When Liz Truss went, they said it at 100 MPs because they didn't want a long, drawn-out contest. In the past, it's been as little as 1 or 2.
Interesting.
Thank you. John, really appreciate hearing from you. John Oxley is a political commentator. That's his views on the current situation ahead of the Washington summit. Thank you.